everyone. I'm Ari Meglin here with Rachel Poley, and we're your hosts for the Merry Writer podcast. We are on episode 87, and this week's question is, how do you avoid creating Mary Sue characters? Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening so you never miss a show. And if you enjoy our episode, please do give it a like. Okay, so I suppose we should discuss what a Mary Sue is. It is a derogatory term used to refer to an idealized and perfect main character. It's usually used to describe a female main character, and there is a term for male characters. However, everyone seems to have a different one. That could be Gary Stu, Larry Stu, Marty Stu. That was the other one. So who knows? But Mary Sue is the one that everyone seems to know, unless you don't. So this perfectionism of a main character can come in the form of physical appearance, skills and talents, intelligence, anything like that. And it's often a mix of all of these. What happens with a Mary Sue is you end up with a kind of a flat character with very few or almost no flaws at all, no imperfections, and very little ability to grow and develop. So a Mary Sue character is the sort of character that does not grab a reader. They are considered quite boring to read. I do know a lot of people like writing them. They're probably quite interesting to write because you don't always realize you're doing it. But yeah, as readers, Mary Sues are not great. So how do we stop from writing them? And let me say, many writers, especially new and young writers, can create Mary Sues without realizing it. And I know that is an issue, but don't worry, there is ways to sort of figure it out and then change it. Usually comes through an edit. See, editing fixes everything.
The thing with Mary Sue characters is that as Ari just said, they are considered boring to read, but it's also not realistic. And I get it, most of us write fiction, which it's not real. But when it comes to creating a Mary Sue character, you do want the character to develop and still be realistic because you want them to relate to your readers. Or I guess you want your readers to relate to the character, I should say. And nobody is perfect. Nobody should strive to be perfect. And by creating a Mary Sue, you're sort of creating that mentality that people can be perfect and that they should be perfect, whether you mean to or not. I'm not saying people are doing it on purpose and that it's necessarily a bad thing, but your readers should be able to move along the story with their character and agree with them, disagree with them, but also relate to them a little bit and sort of have a relationship with the characters, despite them being fictional.
That's it exactly, isn't it? Relatability. Even if you're writing some sort of superhero character who's really, really strong and we don't have the ability to go, yeah, I'm really strong too, there's still ways to be relatable to a character. And I have to say, you can make a perfect character, one that is physically perfect, mentally perfect, emotionally perfect, an absolute, idolized character. But by the end of the novel, they better be like crying and struggling and like losing their power. That's the point. They're meant to change. They're meant to grow and adapt. And that even means growing the other way. That's not the right word. That even means degrowing. Is that a word? I don't know. We're just going to go with it. Where you start off with a strong, powerful character, and by the end, maybe that power has been stripped away. Maybe they were a hero, and by the end, they become a villain. Maybe, or at least people think they're the villain. They need to change. And the problem is, when we talk about Mary Sue, this is the sort of character that does not change. They start perfect, they end perfect. And throwing in the odd vice, like, oh my gosh, that character swore, is not enough. And I have seen that, where it's like, oh, I gave them advice. They said a bad word, or they tried a cigarette once. And it's like, I hate that.
Well, that's the thing. When people, if you create character profiles, I know not everybody does, but a lot of times when you create a character profile, you often try to think of a list of traits that describe your character. And a lot of people look at positive traits, but they pay no attention to the negative trait. And a lot of times you might not have to. The characters will usually write themselves, and they could show both positive and negative traits on their own during the story. But you should have some sort of idea. And again, I'm going to say, I know not everybody plans out their novels. Some people just go ahead and jump right into the writing. But if you're going to create a character, have some sort of idea of what you want their goal to be and where you want them to end up at the end of the story so that they don't regress or degrow, as Ari says.
Unless they're meant to.
Oh, right. Yeah, unless they're meant to. But you want them to regress in like a good way. Not that anybody should be regressing on certain things, but depending on what the situation is and what the plot is, and this is a hard topic because every story is different and everybody writes differently. So quick disclaimer, as you should do with all of our episodes, take our advice with a grain of salt.
That should be our tagline. Take our advice with a grain of salt.
Should be. It really should be.
No, but you're right. It's like, say we did have the superhero character that's absolutely perfect in every way, and by the end they have lost their power. It's like, that doesn't have to be a negative. It can literally be, look, they didn't need the super strength and super speed and laser eyes to overcome difficulties. They lost their power and they managed to use teamwork and friendship or sneaky tenacity. I don't know, whatever you want. You know, it doesn't have to be this, oh my God, they were great and now they're awful. It can still work in the same way by kind of giving them an adaptability. So, but we're just trying to get you away from writing this kind of, oh my God, this character's perfect. So, with that being said, here's one of my main tips. And I know I'm probably going to get a stick for this, but I don't care. Don't make a character an embodiment of yourself. The reason that happens is, especially with younger writers, there is this need to put themselves as the main character and then make this more perfect version. Because let's be honest, as Rachel said, a lot of people are writing fantasy, and so maybe you really like the idea of having thick, wavy hair and perfect eyesight and a really high intelligence and great martial art ability, and you don't have that, so you write that. That's often where Mary Sue characters can accidentally develop. You start off with giving them certain features that you would like, and then it adds to, well, I'd really like to be a ace gunslinger and a perfect chef and can fly every plane and talk to animals, and it just becomes this kind of wish fulfillment. So you can add some traits of your own, you can add some of your virtues, you can add some of your vices, you can even add some of your own physical traits if that's what you want. But I do recommend not creating yourself as an avatar in your books. Again, I know a lot of people start like that, and that is okay to start like that, especially if you're new to writing and you're kind of finding your feet about how to create characters. I mean, it's kind of understandable to use people you know and yourself to build characters at the beginning if you're really, really at the start of your writing journey. Try and think of that as like a very basic template, and then go back and then start pulling some of those pieces out, thinking about that character and going, do they really need all the martial art skills and all the weapon skills? It's like, this is not the Matrix where you've plugged them into everything. So just dial it back a bit and don't create yourself as a character.
We've actually done an episode in the past, and I can't remember which episode it is, but we did talk about whether or not writers should put themselves in their books or not. And I got to be brutally honest, I don't remember what we said. I really don't. I don't remember any of the advice that we said, but I do agree with that. I think putting yourself in your story when you're first starting out isn't a bad idea, because it does give you practice on creating characters and things like that. And you can show different ways that you can grow fictionally, but also you need to think about your negative traits as well, because unfortunately we are not all perfect. So if you are going to write yourself as a character, you need to have the good as well as the bad. And it also helps too that you need to find some traits that reflect other traits. As Ari mentioned, you just use the example about like having like good eyesight with teal eyes, and, all that stuff. But here I go. I'm going to use Marvel as another example yet again. Hawkeye in the comics, the reason he has such good eyesight and he is Hawkeye is because he's deaf. And that is not portrayed in the movies at all. It's not explained at all. But in the comics, he is deaf. And because he doesn't have one of his main senses, all of his other senses are heightened. And I'm not saying that being deaf is a flaw, but they had to adapt to, being deaf. And because of that, X, Y, and Z happened. When you come up, whether it's a positive trait or a negative trait, you can come up with something that's like the polar opposite, or give them another trait because of something else that they have or they did or they think.
Yeah, and I have to say, I'm always fine with us using Marvel as a good reference, because whether it's the comics or the movies, there's so many characters, so much going on, and not all the characters have it, but there is a lot of growth and change and adaptability within the characters, and like backstory that can affect them or give them those traits. So yeah, I'm totally fine. I think we should always be using Marvel as a reference. And if you haven't read the comics, go do that. It's very important.
Yep. It is very important.
You never know. Maybe Marvel will be like, wow, they're pimping our stuff. We'll sponsor them.
Yes.
Marvel, give us money.
Please and thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to move on to my next point. Always create characters that develop. I know I've said that. I'm saying it again. Your characters need to get better or worse, depending on where your story's going. If they're going to de-evolve into the villain, then they need to do that. They need to change. They need to develop at something, at skills, their communication, reactions, emotional maturity, physicality, whether they get injured, whether they get enhanced. Something needs to change. And it should not happen really, really soon. We're not talking they start out and then the inciting incident is they get superhuman powers. That is a change, but that should not be the only change. It shouldn't be on page 1 and 2, the regular person. On page 3 and 4, they get hit by a radioactive octopus in the face at a sushi bar, and boom, suddenly the octopus man. I don't know if Octopus Man is a character. If I am and I'm accidentally using it and infringing on someone's copyright, I apologize. But anyway, it totally lost my train of thought. It's like, that is not the change. There should be more changes that follow. The character's arc in the story should allow a development and an adaptability and a growth to the character that we can go along with the ride. That's what we want to do. We want to see them change. Let's jump to our other favorite thing to reference: Lord of the Rings. How Frodo started off, how Frodo ended. Big difference. You could see the change in him. And yes, obviously it was the ring and everything, but it doesn't matter. It was a change that we got to see. That is important. So take a little bit of time, look at your characters, list out all those wonderful points, list out all those bad points, and then make sure that they kind of add up. You don't want loads of great ones and a couple of bad ones and then no change. It's like, where are they going? And also, can we avoid their biggest vice is they want to please people. They're too nice. That is not a big enough vice. Can I just say that? That is not a big enough vice. So I've seen that a few too many times. Like, they're just so darn nice. No, that is crap.
I'm really sorry. I'm just still stuck on the radioactive octopus and a sushi bar.
I wanted to avoid the whole spider thing, so I thought, well, something different. And then Dog Ock came in my head, and I was like, well, we'll throw an octopus at it. Yeah.
But the fact that you put the octopus in a sushi bar.
It worked. Would you prefer?
I love the immediate detail. You're like, radioactive octopus tentacle to the face at a sushi bar.
Yep. Yeah, that's my idea. Nobody's allowed to steal it, unless, of course,
oh my
it's
God.
a story idea, and I've stolen it by mistake. Yeah.
Was this octopus in a tank? Was it ready to be eaten, or was it on somebody's plate and it came alive because it's radioactive?
I like that. I love that. Yeah, it was the calamari that sort of like calamari and went for him. Perfect.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, develop those characters, people. Legit. I didn't even hear anything you said. It's just like octopus.
Not listening to me again.
No, it's your fault.
Blaming.
That was your fault. No, I tune people out sometimes, but that particular one, that was your fault because that was funny. And you weren't even trying to be funny, but I
will take it. I will always take someone saying I'm funny. Doesn't happen often, so I will take that.
I mean, but yeah, as Ari said, create characters that can develop. Yay. Thumbs up.
I was wondering if you're going to say that because you're holding your thumb up. It's like, this is radio, right? No one's going to be able
I know, nobody can see me, but the thumb is up. See, there you go. There's a flaw. You can have a character who just tunes people out red and has no idea what's going on. And they're on this journey, but they don't know where they're going. They don't know what they're doing.
So you want someone to write you as you.
Yeah, see, I can't, according to Ari, I can't write a character that's the embodiment of myself, but you guys can.
Yeah. Use Rachel as your inspiration.
Oh my gosh.
I have to say, one way, if you are struggling with character development and you're not sure if you are making a Mary Sue, is think about some of your favorite characters from both fiction and from both literature and maybe movies or TV. Think about why you like them, and then maybe write that out. Like, what are their vices? What are their virtues? How have they changed from maybe the first episode in the series to the 10th or the millionth, whatever, however many episodes there were, or at the beginning of the movie to the end? It will help to kind of give you an idea of how that character changed, of how your characters could change, different things that can trigger those changes, and how you felt towards that character. Did you like them at the beginning and hate them at the end? Were you a bit off with them at the beginning and then you saw them struggling and overcoming those struggles, so you liked them? Were they just bleh? Obviously not if they're your favorite character. But yeah, you can use them as kind of a template again to kind of give yourself an idea of how to develop a character if you're struggling with that. And there's nothing wrong with struggling with that. We all start somewhere and we all have struggles. And if character development is one of the struggles, there are ways to get around it. And using, other people's characters and sort of almost like, I don't want to say dissecting them because that sounds gross, deconstructing them. By deconstructing them, it can give you new ideas and ways of thinking towards your own characters. So just a thought.
You can dissect an octopus.
Your silly comments and the cat crying outside. This is just a rigmarole. Okay, if you actually got to the end of this podcast, good on you, because that is impressive. So what we did was we discussed what a Mary Sue is. And again, obviously, this is not just a female character. There are male characters, the Mary Sues, Marty Sues. I have no idea. Try not to make a hyped up version of yourself as an avatar for your story. Make your characters grow and develop and make them relatable and realistic. That's how you connect them to readers. Very important. Okay, now it's your turn. Have you ever created a Mary Sue character? We'd love to chat about it. Tell us your answers in the comments or on Twitter using the hashtag The Mary Writer Podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you want to get some extra content, check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/The Mary Writer Podcast. You can support our show for as little as $1 a month and get extra bonus content. Tune in every Wednesday for a new episode where we ask all the right questions. Thanks for listening. Bye.
I contributed nothing to this episode. Bye.
You did this on purpose because this is mine to edit.
The funny thing is you started it with the whole octopus thing.
That was a cracking idea, brilliant idea, and you laughed at it. Devastating. Anyway, I've got to finish my ending. This podcast is brought to you by Stuffed Bookshelves. Our TBR piles are huge. The music titled Inspired is by Kevin MacLeod, licensed under Creative Commons 4.0.